So your other role as a compliance officer or data protection officer, do you use AI to help in your job?
Yeah, so we do have AI assistants, which we have found a lot of value from. And one of them is the AI DPO assistant, which we developed. And this is a DPO assistant which uses our RAG technology, which is our Capabara knowledge system. We have uploaded into our data set the advisories, the guidelines, and so on from the PDPC on various different topics and various different matters, all of which are related to data protection. This particular AI assistant allows us to make queries relating to data protection, and it provides us with answers that will allow us to dig deeper and reference us to the relevant advisories. If I were to now launch the DPO assistant, so here you can see that there are specific drop-down lists. This has allowed us to better tune the DPO assistant to provide more relevant answers for queries that are asked. So perhaps I can just go ahead and choose one particular topic, which is on CCTV. So perhaps the question that I can ask in this case would be, assume that I'm a company that wants to now install CCTV camera in order to monitor employee behavior and as well as for safety and security. What are the considerations? I'll go ahead and type that in. So here I've put in my question. My company wants to install CCTV cameras to monitor employee behavior as well as safety and security. What are the considerations? So I'll go ahead and ask the question. So right now, the knowledge system is in the process of making a search against the data set for the information. And since the data set is fairly large, sometimes the loading takes a little bit of time, but it comes back with answers which we find to be pretty good. So here we have the answer that's been provided by the AI DPO assistant. What you see here is not only does it inform you of the obligations and concepts and it gives you a detailed answer, but it also helps you to contextualize and give you examples that will help you to better understand how these obligations may apply to your particular scenario. And it gives you a set of recommended actions that you may want to consider before you take such actions to implement CCTV cameras within your organization. So perhaps we could ask a follow-up question, which is, how long can I retain CCTV camera footage for in my company? So we ask a follow-up question. And again, it will take slightly longer time as it is searching through the data sets of advisories, guidelines, and so on.
Does it provide citations?
So over here, we already see that there are certain citations that are provided for the earlier answer.
In terms of the output, how do you judge output to be good enough or accurate? I mean, certain things you look out for?
So one of the things that we look out for, of course, obviously, is the accuracy of the output itself. But the other thing that we look out for as well is the references themselves, the citations. The important thing to note is that we do go back to the reference material as well to confirm the information that is provided. What the AI DPO assistant is very useful for is to provide the initial run of the research, the answers, the citations, which then allows us to double check the answers and then before we go on and use that information for our data protection efforts in the company. So this is a system which now has the capability to carry out a chat with the user. There's a chat function with the user that allows the user to continue to have that conversation and ask follow-up questions arising from the initial question that was asked.
Excellent. So how much time or, what was productivity gain using an AI DPO assistant for your compliance role?
So again, I would say perhaps somewhere in the region of maybe 30% of time that is saved. Again, that translates to maybe about, on average, maybe about 2 hours a week, which would have otherwise spent doing research, trawling through the various advisories and guidelines to get an answer.
Is there another AI assistant within your own compliance officer role that you use as well?
Yes, so there's another one that we use, which has also proven to be very useful. Identify risks within business processes. It provides suggested values for risk. So I've just launched our risk and controls guide, which is our AI assistant that helps us to identify risks and provide suggested controls within business processes. So I'll go ahead and indicate an industry, maybe perhaps healthcare. I'll put in a department, maybe a common one might be HR. Maybe I'll put in a business process for recruitment, what personal data is collected. Perhaps you could say the person's name, his CV, and perhaps his contact number, what are the data subjects, put in job applicants. As to where personal data is being collected, could indicate job portals or emails, for example. Where is the personal data being stored? Cloud storage. Where do you share personal data? Whether it's in Singapore, I'll indicate nil. And who do you share personal data with outside Singapore? Maybe I could indicate a cloud storage in the US. Okay, so here we go. We'll launch the guide. The way the AI assistants are designed is it always gives you an introduction before it launches into the tasks that it is tuned to do. So this is the first step. The second step, as always, it will repeat back to you and confirm that the details are correct, because this forms the context and the background to what the AI assistant is supposed to do. So then we go into the next step. Now here, the AI assistant gives you a quick rundown of some of the risks that may be unique to your particular industry. So we mentioned the healthcare industry, and it gives you in a few paragraphs why data protection is important within the healthcare industry and what could potentially happen, for example, if certain risks were to take place. So we move on to the next step. So the next step gives you an overview of potential risks that could take place at different stages of the information lifecycle, your collection, use, disclosure, storage, and so on.
And it's tuned to the HR process.
Yes, it is tuned to the HR process. Okay. So this is just to get you, to get the user's mind thinking that perhaps these are certain areas within the information lifecycle that he needs to think about what are the risks that may be present there that he hasn't considered before. So the next step is where we get into the meat of things, which is where the AI assistant will then go on to generate for you some suggested risks that could be present within the business process that you have identified. And the way the AI assistant has been tuned, it has been tuned such that it gives you the risk according to the 3 C's format, which is the cause, the context, and the consequence. This allows you to have a clear understanding of the risk that is being suggested. If you were to put this into your risk management framework, should somebody else review the work that you have done or the input that you've put in there, it makes it easier for them to understand when you have the 3 C's format in place. So over here, you see it's given 4 different types of potential risks that could arise due to the business process and the input that you've given it. And now finally, for each risk, it's going to give you 3 suggested controls on basically what steps that you can take for each risk to mitigate that risk, to minimize the possibility of it happening within your organization. And you can also see that it gives you labeling in terms of preventive, detective, responsive, technical, administrative, and physical, which is to say these are the different type of controls that you can implement so that you take care at every stage to minimize the chances of the risk occurring. Once it has generated all of that, then it's ready to end the exercise. If you have more clarifications that you require, you will be able to ask the AI assistant and it will be able to provide you, for example, more suggested risk, more suggested controls, and so on. So this is how we've been using this AI assistant tool to help with our data protection efforts within the organization.
So how do you use this? Is it that you send this to your users when they want to start a process, or do you use this as a tool for you to help you respond to them? And, what is the challenge that you're addressing with this AI assistant and what kind of savings you got?
So one of the things that could potentially occur, especially in organizations where the staff may not be so well trained in data protection, is that they may not be very familiar with when you talk about risks, when you talk about controls. When we do our consultancy projects, that's what we find in quite a number of our organizations. In Straits, our employees are fairly well trained in data protection, but there's always the issue of time. People are very busy. So we have to come up with processes that allow them to get this information out faster. Even though our staff, they know how to identify risks, they know how to identify controls, but with this chatbot, for example, with this AI assistant tool, for example, it enables them to come up with that information faster. And it also helps us with the data protection office because once we have allowed them to use this AI assistant tool, then we would be able to quickly capture that information into our own systems where we keep records of the business processes and where we now have records as well of the different types of risks that are identified, and the different controls that are going to be put in place to mitigate the risks of those business processes.
So typically, how long is a process manually and that versus now using the AI assistant on both your user and your side?
Before we implemented the AI assistants, it was a very manual process where we had to speak to the different stakeholders from the different departments, and each of these stakeholders would take some time to review their business processes, to come up with the risks, to come up with the controls. But now that we've deployed this, it takes a lot faster because they are just able to quickly put in the business processes, and the AI assistant is able to suggest pretty good values that they can immediately take and which are applicable to their business processes. So I would say it gives us a time savings of 40 to 50% as compared to when it was just a very manual process of going back and forth, compared to now when we just ask the user to launch the AI assistant and they're able to key in a few input and they're able to get the values that are useful to them and useful to us as the DPOs and the DP office.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, it's very significant, right? And especially for you guys running so many processes and you've seen it clients as well. Well, thanks a lot, Isa. And I think, these AI assistants, looks like you actually use an army of AI assistants, right? Is that not just one in your role?
We are always trying to innovate and create more AI assistants that will help us to speed up our work from having to go through the mundane processes and to free up their time so that they can better involve themselves in the more strategic aspects of their job.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Isa.
You're welcome, Alvin.
Become an AI business professional with the help of Capabara Suite. Go to www.capabara.com to find out more. For inquiries, reach out to sale@straightsinteractive.com.